Lieutenant James Butterfingers Wilson had earned his nickname honestly, though he preferred to think of himself as uniquely talented at finding new ways to break things. As Earth's preeminent systems analyst at the Global Defense Network, GDN, his tendency to accidentally stress-test equipment had actually led to numerous security improvements. Today, however, he had outdone himself. "Let me get this straight," Admiral Helena Pierce said, her steel-gray eyes fixed on the two neon green casts adorning Wilson's arms. "You managed to break both arms while trying to fix the coffee machine?" Wilson shifted uncomfortably in his medical bay bed. "With all due respect, Admiral, that coffee machine is a death trap. The maintenance panel is positioned right above a perfectly waxed floor, and who stores spare parts on a high shelf right next to it." He paused, then added hopefully, "At least I discovered 3 potential security vulnerabilities in our medical AI while being treated." Admiral Pierce pinched the bridge of her nose, a gesture Wilson had become quite familiar with during his 3 years under her command. "Lieutenant, you are without doubt the most brilliant and most accident-prone officer I've ever commanded. How do you expect to run system diagnostics when you can't even type?" Before Wilson could respond, the medical bay's holoscreen flashed red. Lieutenant Commander Riya Patel's face appeared, her usually composed expression replaced with barely contained panic. "Admiral, we have a situation. Long-range sensors have detected an incoming fleet. It's massive." "Define massive," Pierce demanded, already reaching for her command tablet. "Initial readings suggest over 3,000 vessels, Admiral. They're running on some kind of hybrid technology we've never seen before. But here's the strange part. Their communications array seems to be broadcasting using incredibly outdated protocols. Almost like what, Commander?" Wilson's eyes widened. "Let me see those readings." He awkwardly shuffled to the edge of his bed, nearly falling before Pierce steadied him. The data scrolling across the screen made his jaw drop. "This is impossible. They're running their entire fleet systems on Modular Space OS 1.0. It's basically a modified version of ancient Earth operating systems from the 1990s. "Explain," Pierce ordered. "Remember those old space probe signals we used to send out? Well, some of our early software must have been intercepted. These aliens, whoever they are, apparently thought our old operating systems were the peak of our technology and built their entire military infrastructure around it. They've modified it, sure, but the base code..." He trailed off, a gleam appearing in his eyes that Pierce had learned to both respect and fear. "Lieutenant, whatever you're thinking." "Admiral, I can't type, but I might be able to save Earth using just my nose and toes. Also, I'm going to need a really long straw and about 15 energy drinks." The first transmission from the alien fleet came exactly 3 hours later. The being on screen had metallic blue skin and what appeared to be ceremonial armor covered in blinking LEDs. "Greetings, humans. I am Supreme Commander Zax Thor of the Cronin Armada. Your primitive defenses are no match for our superior technology. Surrender now, and we promise to be relatively merciful." Wilson, now suspended in what the medical team called an adaptive workstation, but looked more like a hammock crossed with a desktop computer, grinned despite his predicament. "Admiral, permission to respond?" Pierce looked between her incapacitated best systems analyst and the alien warlord on screen. Sometimes, she reflected, the universe had a very strange sense of humor. "Granted. But Wilson, try not to start an intergalactic incident with your face." "No promises, Admiral." Wilson wiggled his nose toward the communication controls. "Hey, Supreme Commander, have you guys ever heard of something called a system update?" The war for Earth's survival was about to begin, and humanity's best hope was a man who couldn't even scratch his own nose. But as Wilson was fond of saying, sometimes the best solutions came from thinking outside the cast. "Your primitive attempts at humor do not amuse us," Supreme Commander Zax Thor's voice boomed through the command center speakers. "What are these updates you speak of?" Wilson, still suspended in his makeshift workstation, was too busy typing with his nose to respond immediately. Lieutenant Commander Patel, watching his progress on a secondary screen, tried not to wince as he accidentally activated the base's coffee machines for the 3rd time. "Sorry about that," Wilson mumbled, his nose sliding across the keyboard with surprising precision. Just doing a little reconnaissance. By the way, Commander Zaxthor, has your fleet ever experienced something called the blue screen of death? The alien commander's confident expression flickered. Death? Your primitive systems dare to threaten the mighty Cronin Armada with death? Admiral Pierce shot Wilson a warning look. Lieutenant, whatever you're planning. Got it, Wilson announced triumphantly, somehow managing to hit the enter key with his left pinky toe. Hey Rhea, remember how we used to joke about the worst possible time for a system update? Across the Cronin fleet, thousands of screens simultaneously displayed a message that hadn't been seen in centuries. Your system is being updated. Please do not turn off your computer. Progress, one of 2,847 updates. The reaction was immediate. Zaxthor's image began to stutter. What is this sorcery? Our weapon systems are. Our navigation is. Who designed this progress bar? Fun fact about ancient Earth operating systems, Wilson said, managing to look smug despite hanging upside down. They always estimated the completion time wrong. Could be 5 minutes, could be 5 years. Never can tell. Admiral Pierce leaned closer to the screens displaying the Cronin fleet's status. Their ships are falling out of formation. But Lieutenant, this won't hold them forever. No, but Phase 2 might. Wilson wiggled his toes across another keyboard. Commander Patel, remember that virus you helped me design last year? The one that makes all speakers play Never Gonna Give You Up on endless loop? Rhea's eyes widened. You didn't. Oh, I did. And I added a special touch. Wilson's nose tapped a final command. Let's see how they handle Earth's deadliest weapon. Technical support hold music. Across 3,000 alien vessels, a cheerful voice began to play, Thank you for contacting Earth Defense. All our representatives are currently busy. Your conquest is important to us. Please stay on the line. The command center erupted in controlled chaos as reports flooded in. The Cronin fleet's perfectly synchronized formation dissolved into confusion. Some ships began moving in random patterns, their navigation systems trying to process 30 years of updates simultaneously. Others simply drifted, their crews presumably too distracted by the combination of Rick Astley and hold music to maintain proper control. This is impossible. Zaxthor raged, his image now tinted blue from his ship's failing display. Our systems are superior. Our technology is. Why is there a paperclip asking me if I need help writing a surrender letter? Wilson grinned. Oh, you've met Clippy. I took the liberty of upgrading him. Now he offers helpful suggestions in 20 different alien languages, none of them quite correct. Admiral Pierce watched as the mighty Cronin fleet descended into digital chaos. How long will this keep them occupied? Well, Wilson said, attempting to scratch his nose against the keyboard and accidentally launching the base's holiday screensaver instead. Considering they're running on modified Windows 95 and I just initiated every update from the past 3 decades while simultaneously running a disk defragmentation, system scan, and forcing them to update their audio drivers, I'd say we have about 6 hours before their tech support figures out how to Control-Alt-Delete their way out of this. 6 hours isn't much time, Rhea noted, already pulling up Earth's defense grids. No, Wilson agreed, his expression turning serious. But it's enough time to implement Phase 3. Admiral, remember how you always said my tendency to crash systems could never be used as a tactical advantage? Pierce raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. Well, I think it's time to show the Cronin Armada why they should have read the terms and conditions before installing Earth software. Also, could someone please scratch my nose? It's been itching for the past hour, and I'm afraid if I try, I'll accidentally launch our entire nuclear arsenal. As the command center mobilized for Phase 3, Wilson couldn't help but smile. Sometimes the best defense wasn't sophisticated technology or powerful weapons. Sometimes it was simply knowing how to turn someone's own systems against them, one frustrating update at a time. From his suspended position, he watched as Clippy appeared on thousands of alien screens, cheerfully asking if they needed help formatting their defeat. The universe might have a strange sense of humor, but today, humanity was writing the punchline. The next few hours in Earth's command center felt like a bizarre tech support nightmare. Wilson, still suspended in his hammock-like workstation, had developed an almost ballet-like precision with his nose typing technique. The fact that he was simultaneously coding with his toes on a second keyboard had prompted several junior officers to start recording for posterity. Status report, Admiral Pierce commanded, watching as the massive holographic display showed the Cronin fleet's increasingly erratic movements. The good news, Wilson said, executing a particularly impressive nose swipe across his keyboard, is that about 40% of their fleet is still stuck in update loops. The bad news is that their tech support is better than we expected. They're starting to figure out how to force quit their systems. Commander Patel's fingers flew across her console. Confirmed. I'm detecting multiple ships managing to bypass the update protocols. They're angry, Admiral. Very angry. As if to emphasize her point, Supreme Commander Zax Thor's image appeared on the main screen. His usually metallic blue skin had taken on a distinctly purplish tinge of rage. The constant hold music still playing in the background somewhat undermined his attempt at menacing authority. You primitives, he sputtered. Do you know how long it took us to perfect our systems? 3 of our ships just received something called a printer driver update, and now they can't even find their own weapons arrays. Wilson perked up. Oh, you tried to install printer drivers? Rookie mistake. Never install printer drivers during an invasion. Silence. Zax Thor roared. We are the Cronin Armada. We have conquered 12 galaxies. We will not be defeated by... He glanced down at his screen. An automatic Windows Defender scan that keeps finding threats that may or may not exist. Actually, Wilson said, his nose hovering over a particularly crucial key, that's just the distraction. The real fun is about to start. Admiral, permission to initiate Phase 3? Pierce studied the tactical display. Nearly half the Cronin fleet had recovered from the initial attack, and more ships were breaking free every minute. Whatever Wilson had planned, now was the time. Do it. Wilson's nose descended on the enter key with theatrical flourish. Ladies, gentlemen, and angry aliens, I present to you Operation Paper Jam. Across the Cronin fleet, every system that had finally finished updating suddenly received a new notification. Your system is connected to Earth _printer_001. Would you like to print fleet command history? Before anyone could react, Wilson's toe hit another key. And sent to print. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. Every recovered ship in the Cronin fleet suddenly had their entire command history, from engine diagnostics to lunch menu planning, redirected to a printer that didn't exist. Their systems, desperately trying to complete the phantom print job, began redirecting power from critical systems. What is happening? Zax Thor demanded as his ship's lights began to flicker. Fun fact about ancient Earth operating systems, Wilson explained, looking far too pleased with himself. They'll sacrifice everything to try to complete a print job, even if the printer doesn't exist, even if printing makes no logical sense. The system will never give up, never surrender, and never realize it's being played. Commander Patel's eyes widened as she read the incoming data. Their power systems are being drained, trying to process the print queue. Weapons are going offline. Life support is switching to auxiliary power. They're experiencing what I like to call the ultimate paper jam, Wilson finished. And the best part? The more they try to cancel it, the worse it gets. I call it the infinite printer paradox. On screen, Zax Thor was frantically pushing buttons on his command console. This is impossible. Our greatest scientists spent decades reverse engineering your technology. We made it superior. We made it perfect. That was your first mistake, Wilson said, somehow managing to look dignified despite having just used his left big toe to activate the base's emergency disco lights. You took something that was already perfectly chaotic and tried to make it logical. You didn't improve Earth's old operating systems, you just removed their most important feature. Their glorious, unpredictable imperfection. Admiral Pierce watched as ship after ship in the Cronin fleet went into low power mode, their systems completely overwhelmed by the phantom print queue. How long will this hold them? Well, Wilson said, they have 2 options. They can either wait for the print job to finish, which it never will, or they can try to restart their systems. But here's the fun part. I've modified their boot sequence. Every time they restart, they'll receive a new print job. It's printers all the way down. The command center fell silent except for the still-playing hold music and the distant sound of Clippy offering helpful suggestions to increasingly desperate alien crew members. But their victory celebration was premature. On screen, Zax Thor's expression shifted from rage to something more dangerous: calculation. "Very clever human," he said, his voice eerily calm. "But you forget. We've spent centuries studying your primitive technology. And we've learned one thing. When all else fails, there's always Control-Alt-Delete." Wilson's grin faded slightly. "Oh no." "Oh yes," Zax Thor smiled. "Initiate Protocol BSOD." As alarms began blaring throughout Earth's command center, Wilson realized that perhaps he wasn't the only one who knew how to weaponize computer crashes. The real battle was about to begin. Protocol BSOD turned out to be exactly what Wilson feared: a binary system override device, essentially a cosmic Control-Alt-Delete that began forcibly rebooting every system in range, including Earth's defenses. "They're turning our own tricks against us," Wilson muttered, watching his screens throughout the command center flickered ominously. His nose was starting to get sore from the constant typing, but there wasn't time to complain. They've been studying our old systems for centuries. They must have figured out how to weaponize the blue screen of death. Admiral Pierce's voice remained steady despite the chaos. "Options, Lieutenant?" "Working on it," Wilson said, his toes dancing across multiple keyboards. "But they're not just forcing reboots anymore. They're installing something. Something big." Commander Patel's console erupted in warnings. "It's some kind of hybrid virus. They've combined their advanced technology with—" "Oh no. What is it?" Pierce demanded. "They've weaponized Windows Vista." The entire command center fell silent. Even the emergency sirens seemed to quiet in respect for the horror of the moment. "That's impossible," Wilson whispered. "Nobody would be that cruel." Zax Thor's face appeared on the remaining functional screens, his satisfaction evident. "You thought you were the only ones who could use outdated technology as a weapon? We spent years studying every operating system Earth ever created. Vista was our Manhattan Project." Systems across Earth's defense network began crashing as the hybrid virus spread. The combination of advanced alien technology and history's most frustrating operating system was proving devastating. Wilson's mind raced. They needed something equally powerful, equally chaotic. His eyes fell on the base's ancient coffee machine, the very one that had caused his current predicament. "Admiral," he said slowly, "I have an idea, but you're going to have to trust me. And you're definitely going to have to suspend several safety protocols." "Will it save Earth?" "Maybe." "Will it probably crash every computer system on the planet?" "Temporarily, yes." Pierce looked at her rapidly failing defense grid, then back at her most brilliant and accident-prone officer. "Do it." Wilson's nose and toes moved in perfect synchronization as he began implementing what he would later call Operation Coffee Break. "Computer," Wilson commanded, "initiate emergency caffeine protocols." Warning, the base AI responded. "Connecting critical defense systems to the coffee machine network is not recommended. Override safety protocols." Authorization: Butterfingers Alpha Java. What happened next would later be described in classified documents as the Great Percolation. Wilson had realized something crucial about the base's coffee machine. It ran on the original version of the operating system he'd helped design, the one that had caused him to break both arms. More importantly, it was so fundamentally buggy that it had developed its own unique form of artificial chaos. As the coffee machine's code began interfacing with Earth's defense systems, something extraordinary happened. The inherent instability of the coffee machine's programming began creating random patterns that the Cronin virus couldn't predict or counter. What is this?" Zax Thor demanded as his carefully crafted virus began encountering strings of code that made no logical sense. "This," Wilson announced triumphantly, "is what happens when you let a coffee machine that can't even make decent espresso interface with military-grade hardware. I call it Java warfare." The effect spread through both human and alien networks like a caffeine-powered tsunami. The coffee machine's chaotic code, combined with Wilson's strategic nose typing, created a cascade of system crashes that somehow caused Earth's defenses to work better even as they failed spectacularly. Cronin ships began experiencing what Wilson would later term the ultimate blue screen of blue screens. Their weapon systems started brewing coffee. Their navigation computers began displaying motivational quotes about taking coffee breaks. Their mighty Vista-based virus found itself drowning in an ocean of coffee-themed error messages. This is impossible. Zax Thor raged as his mighty armada was reduced to floating break rooms. Our technology is superior. Our systems are perfect. That's exactly the problem, Wilson said, finally allowing himself to grin. You tried to perfect imperfection. But here's the thing about Earth technology. It's not about being perfect. It's about being adaptable. It's about working with the chaos, not against it. In the end, the mighty Cronin Armada was defeated not by advanced weapons or superior tactics, but by the digital equivalent of a coffee-induced nervous breakdown. Their perfectly engineered systems simply couldn't handle the beautiful chaos of Earth's most imperfect technology. As the alien fleet retreated, their ships trailing digital coffee stains across space, Admiral Pierce turned to Wilson, who was still suspended in his workstation, looking both exhausted and oddly satisfied. "Lieutenant," she said, "I believe we need to seriously reconsider our classification of your accidents. Does this mean I get to keep the coffee machine? Don't push it, Butterfingers." The aftermath brought significant changes to Earth's defense protocols. The term, "pulling a Wilson," entered military jargon, meaning to solve a complex problem through controlled chaos. Coffee machines were classified as potential strategic assets. And somewhere in deep space, a mighty alien armada learned a valuable lesson about the dangers of assuming that perfection beats determination. As for Lieutenant Wilson, he kept his nickname, but it became a badge of honor. After all, he was the man who had saved Earth with 2 broken arms, 1 nose, 10 toes, and an overworked coffee machine. Sometimes the best solutions really do come from thinking outside the cast. The end.